Hosted by Mike, the Big Cheese.
Welcome back to the Heavy Metal Mayhem Radio Show. It is Sunday, September 4th, 2022, 3/4 of the way through the year, and it was a great year for heavy metal. I mean, the last 9 or 10 years, it's just been amazing. All the classic bands from back in the day have been putting out amazing records, at least most of them have, there have been a few clunkers here and there, but not too many. And 2022 was another one, and 2023 is shaping up to be another great one. We should have new Overkill, new Exciter. Siren is working on a new record. We're going to play some classic Siren right after this. Jack Panzer have their new record ready to go. I don't think it's going to happen this year. It'll probably be the beginning of next year. But a ton of classic bands putting out their brand new records in 2023. It's going to be tough to choose from. And I'm really looking forward to Jack Panzer. We opened up tonight's show with some classic Panzer, License to Kill. The new album is going to come in a comic book, so I'm really excited about that. I mean, bands always have to look at new ways of selling albums. I mean, people like myself will always buy them because I come from that generation, and I love it that people have been putting out vinyl records pretty steadily for the last 10 years. I know it's been hard to get them out right now because it's like just it's hard to get anything out there. People aren't working anymore. There's shortages and back orders, but I know the Jack Pans will come out on vinyl, and I'll buy it on there because to me, vinyl has a much more superior sound than CDs or MP3s. I mean, I have everything on digital because of the radio show. We do everything digitally. We don't play records. It's not an old, a radio station where we have two turntables that I was choosing between. So, I have to get a lot of digital stuff. But personally, when I listen to my own music, I prefer to throw them on a vinyl record, sit back, relax, and enjoy that deep, rich sound. All right, we got a great show for everybody tonight. One of my favorite singers, Jim Crean, is on here tonight. He's got a brand new brand called Scream Taker. We'll be talking to him all about that. We already spoke to Jim the other day. The interview was pre-recorded. We'll get that on in a little while. We have Guy Man Dude calling in live in about 15 minutes. We'll be talking to him. Heaven and Hell just released his second record, so we'll get into him about that and everything else going on in his life musically between now and then. We're going to do a little Simon right now. Then we'll jump back into more music. We're going to get to an interview pretty quickly with Guy because the interview with Jim was pretty long, and I want to get it on before the end of the show because it is the Labor Day weekend here, and I know people have things to do. And I appreciate you taking out the time to hang out with us tonight if you are listening live. I know most people get the replays after the live show is over, but let's do a little Simon right now. Can't wait for the new record to come out. It's going to be killer, I'm sure. Watch us fly.
Leveled out the playing field, so there's no Dangerous. Take 3.
Looking at you and I see this. Going to slow, and afraid I don't know what I'm
I Man Dude Against the Grain. That's off his second record in '91. Manic Distortion and Heaven and Hell Records re-released it last year. We're gonna get a guy on the phone right now, get that interview going. So give me 1 second, and we will dial him up. We've been batting 100 trying to get everybody online in one shot. Hopefully it'll continue this week. Let's see how this goes.
Hey, Mike.
Hey Guy, how are you? You're on the air live.
How you doing? Let me turn up my phone here.
You got it.
You're kind of soft to me. Okay, could you talk again?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, good.
So make
How
it
are
a
you
little.
doing?
I'm doing great, man. It's a pleasure to have you on here today. I have to tell you, I'm so happy that Heaven and Hell got a hold of that record and put it out again, because I think that record never really got what it deserved back when it came out. And, 25, 30 years later, I mean, people are finally hearing it who haven't heard it back then.
Yeah, well, I think it's a classic album. Back when I did it, I thought it came out great tunes and really good performance and sounded great. And I put that record out myself, and I got it to a lot of colleges across the country, but it's hard to distribute a record yourself when you're up against the big record companies.
Sure, especially back then. I mean, today it feels like it's commonplace for bands to put out their own stuff and release it. It's like that's just the way it is now. But you're talking, in the late '80s, early '80s, even into the '90s, that was a really hard thing to do.
Yeah, it was.
So, the first record comes out. I remember getting Sleight of Hand, and it was an instrumental record. And, being young back then, I just couldn't get into the instrumental records. I knew how talented you were. You could hear it in your guitar playing, especially being such a big Randy Rhoads fan from, going back to Ozzy in the early 80s. But it took me till maybe 10 years later when I really started appreciating instrumental records. And was that a hard sell, putting out an instrumental for your debut record? And on top of that, you're a kid and you're on MCA Records.
Yeah, well, it wasn't really a hard sell because back at that time, that was starting to become pretty big with Joe Satriani and, Yngwie and the whole guitar shred scene that was going on. And I think MCA wanted to try to capture something like that. And I had the manager of the Red Hot Chili Peppers was my manager. And he knew somebody, one of the A&R guys was going to MCA, so it kind of all came together. And I sent him a demo tape and a video, and it came together and got signed.
That's amazing. So when you think about it, I mean, we all know you as a guitar player, but originally you were a drummer, or did you play guitar early before the drums, but really master the drums first? How did it go about with you as far as being, your initial thing as a musician?
Well, I started playing guitar when I was 7 years old. And about when I was 12 years old, took up the drums, listening to the drummer from Chicago, the group Chicago, and Danny Seraphin, and, then listening to Billy Cobham after that. So I kind of went straight ahead and straightforward with the drums. And I was a professional drummer for like 10 years. And towards the end, I was getting bored with it. And I just had other ideas about what I wanted to do. So I got back into guitar, and I was practicing like 6 to 12 hours a day for going on 3 years. And, I just loved, heavy metal music and, some of my favorite guitar players. And that's what got me back into it. And I kind of went full force into kind of a heavy metal realm.
Did you bother with the guitar at all over those 10 years that you were really focusing on drums? Did you pick it up here and there, or was it just kind of secondary to you being a professional drummer at the time?
I would maybe pick it up a little here and there. And see, what happened was I had a fusion band, and I actually had Steve Vai playing in my band. He played a few gigs, and just watching Steve at practice and hearing what he was doing, I thought I had thoughts of, this is what I really want to do. So I started taking lessons with Steve Vai, and Steve told me, he said, I could tell you're going to be, sort of a shredder, because I was able to play some things pretty quick and pick up on things quick. So I studied with him for about 6 months, and it was kind of around at that time where I really got into it.
Yeah, being that you play multiple instruments and pretty good, I have to say, on top of that. I mean, is music something that came to you relatively easy where you picked something up and you were able to figure it out right away and at least get the hang, not so much master it, but at least be able to do it and get the hang of it? Or do you really have to work hard to learn how to play the drums, to learn how to play the guitar? And I'm talking about just the basics, not like what you became later on as you became more experienced.
Well, I had definitely some talent on my side, but when I was a drummer, I worked really hard at it. A lot of practicing. Studied with some teachers. Watching a lot of great drummers, and the same thing on guitar. I put a lot of hard work into it. No question. Many hours. I had this particular job where I was able to bring my guitar to the job, and that's why I was able to get away with practicing many hours a day. But I think it depends on also too, what you're exposed to. Jimi Hendrix was one of my first concerts, and I was way into his albums, his first album and Electric Ladyland way back then. And I loved Jeff Beck. And so I did a lot of listening to Jeff Beck. And one of my other guitar heroes, I would say, is Ollie Hassel from the group Pato.
Yeah.
Ollie was a great kind of jazz rock guitarist. And, it's kind of like, way back then, it's like I wanted to play like them. And but to answer your question, it's definitely a lot of work for sure.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, in the beginning years as a drummer, was John Anderson the highlight of your drumming career as far as going out on the road and playing with somebody? Or was there somebody else that really, made a spark for you?
Well, that was probably the best gig I had. I played with some name players. I played with Larry Carlton for about 6 months. That was a lot of recording and playing over at his house, his home studio. I did a lot of jingles and stuff like that. But as far as a name player, playing with John Anderson, that was a great tour. The music was really challenging, but I killed it.
I'm sure you did.
So, but I could honestly say, I was a good drummer, and I had some guys I used to listen to, Vinny Caliuta on drums. I used to see him play all the time. I used to see Carlos Vega was a great drummer. I double drummed with him in Steve Porcaro's band back in high school. So, in other words, I was exposed to, a lot of great music and great players.
Yeah. When you did pick up the guitar again and you decided this is, I want to stick with the guitar and, I want to get into metal again. I want to start playing that. Was it Michelangelo that was your first, shot at going at it and doing it? Or did you have something else going on before the solo records came out?
I would say that was definitely got me into the heavy metal scene when I hooked up with Michelangelo. Before that, I was doing like some demos at home, and I was really digging like AC/DC back then. You know who got me into AC/DC was Kevin DeBro from Quiet Riot. I have quite a history with Kevin, and he got me into them. I started listening to him, and when I saw AC/DC at the Forum way back in the early 80s, that kind of did it for me, and so by let's see, I guess it was like 85, this guy who I was actually starting a band with uh, he's the one who brought Michelangelo out to the West Coast, introduced him to me, and then I started playing with Michael, and then that got me into the local scene. So I was with Mike for over a year, and but I had other things that I wanted to do, and the music we were playing was not quite what I wanted to do. So then I broke out on my own.
Yeah. I mean, Michelangelo, an accomplished guitar player in his own right. I mean, yourself, I mean, how does that work out with two guys that are, masterful at their instrument playing in the same band together? Is there friction? Is there headbutting? Is it very competitive? Or is it just an admiration for each other and the way you both play that it worked out?
Yeah, I kind of knew my role. He wanted the two guitar sounds, and with the way Mike plays, I'm not going to try to outplay him. He's a real fast player, and so I had my spots where I could do my thing, and I just kind of played the way I played, and we got along well musically. It didn't clash or anything, and he just was kind of in his I don't know what his kind of speed arpeggio mode, and I wasn't into that. I came from the Jeff Beck, Jimi Hendrix way of playing guitar, but no, I would say musically we got along fine. I mean, it got to a point where he wanted to just one guitar in the band, and that was fine because I was heading into my direction.
Yeah, I get that. Michael's going out with Manowar these days. He's the touring guitar player for Manowar right now.
Yeah, I just saw that.
Yeah.
Some heavy metal news.
Yeah, I caught that yesterday myself. Listen, being a shredder is one thing, but being a songwriter, a composer, and putting together songs that are catchy, have good lyrics to them, have a riff, a chorus, that's another thing. I mean, do you know where to draw the line? Because when you have the ability that you do, you can go off in any direction, guitar-wise, and turning into anything. But do you also realize that you have to have a song with a structure to it to get people into it? I mean, is there a line you draw between how far you go in every song that you write?
Yeah, well, what you're saying is, that was my forte, was melody and structure of songs and the arrangement. A lot of the guitar players of today, these young kids, to me, it all sounds like exercises. It's so boring to me, these guys who are so-called shredders. I really never considered myself a so-called shredder. I just happened to be, I was a melodic guitarist who happened to be able to shred or play fast. But I never, the Yngwie thing, or Vinnie Moore, Paul Gilbert, all great players, but I never really listened to them that much. I just kind of honed in on my own thing. And believe it or not, like on my first album, even though it really kicks ass and I'm playing some full shred stuff on there, but I'm really coming from the Jeff Beck blues thing. I kind of approach the shredding kind of bluesy. So when you think of it that way and kind of go from that angle, it comes out, I think, with more substance. Where, I mean, to me, I see a lot of guys, on YouTube or whatever, or they'll come across on Facebook. They're just playing these exercises. I'm going like, wow, man. I'm thinking to myself, don't you ever listen to Jeff Beck or go back and listen to Jimi Hendrix? I mean, all along the Watchtower, one of the greatest guitar solos up all the time, and it's totally melodic, so that's where I was coming from. I never really thought of myself as a shredder, really.
Yeah. Well, coming from
Michelangelo.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
He was a shredder,
Yeah, absolutely. I'm saying you're coming from our generation. We look back at Jeff Beck and people like that as like the people that did the stuff that we should take influence from and draw from. These kids today, we're lucky if they go back maybe with a guitar player that was out 5 years ago as their influence. They don't go back into the history of music, and it goes back to rhythm and blues and jazz and everything down the road. They don't go that far back anymore. They're very limited. Like they don't have, I don't know if it's the thought process or the capabilities to click a button on the internet to find something a little older than that, but they just don't draw from that anymore. To them, it's old people's music, and I hate to say that because I'm that age group, but that's how they look at it.
Yeah, well, that's right. That's what they're exposed to, and then if they don't, for not going back, the whole thing kind of gets watered down.
Yeah.
It really stems from the blues. If you could play the blues, then you're going to have substance in your playing. And I think most all these young guys, they just don't understand that. I mean, it might sound lame to them or something, but the blues. Now, let's go back to B.B. King. I mean, Jimi Hendrix. I mean, he had so much blues in his playing, and that's what I don't hear in the new generation.
As a guitar player, I mean, who do you feel was the one guitar player that actually defined the sound of a guitar?
Ooh. I don't know. That's kind of hard to say. There's just so many great players, and as far as defining the sound, because I was listening to, say, Hendrix, and I was listening to John McLaughlin too. Two different styles, two different schools. But that's kind of hard to answer. Growing up, one of my friends, Chris Pinnock, he's a great blues guitarist who could play real fast too. He really influenced me. But as far as known guitar players, it's hard for me to answer. But I will tell you, Ollie Hassel was a big, big influence on me. I love that he could play jazzy, but in a rock vein too. So, but I mean, maybe you want me to say Les Paul or somebody like that.
I want you to just say who you think, what sound did you hear coming from a guitar player? They said, this is it. This is what I want to do. This is what I want to create. This is what I want to take and, bring it to the next level, make it my own. Because everybody's influenced by somebody, and they take it to the next level. Then another band comes around and takes their thing and brings it to the next level. It all kind of stems back to one original person, So, but for everybody, it's everybody different. Everybody has their own.
Yeah, I would say the three guys I mentioned, Hendrix, Beck, and Ollie Hassel. And then what I did when I really got into my thing, I purposely didn't listen to a lot of guys, Paul Gilbert, even though, I thought they were really great and stuff like that. I wanted to sound like myself, and I wanted to take what I heard from Hendrix and those guys into my own thing. And some of the tunes on my albums, I think I did a good job of it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. When Sleight of Hand came out in 89, the hard rock and metal world was still thriving. It was still big. And even when Manic Distortion came out in 91, it was still, still happening. It wasn't much later after that the entire scene crashed and burned. I mean, it just, grunge came out, and that just kind of wiped away everything, for many, many
That's
decades.
Right.
Right. Was it a matter of being in the right place at the right time? Because you can only be somewhere when you're there, because that's just the timeline of life, when you get there. But I think these albums would have had so much more of a bigger impact. There might have been a lot more if they were a few years earlier, when you had a little chance to grow in the scene. It came out, I think, so late that, I can't say late, that was the timeline of it, but when the scene changed, and I think they got so lost in the mix that it was a shame, because they were such great records and such different records. I mean, you can't even compare Sleight of Hand to Manic Distortion. They are, to me, two completely different records. And not just because one's instrumental, one's focused on vocals. Sound-wise, they are two completely different albums.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And that was just a sign of me being an artist, or just growing. As an artist, you grow. I did another album after that with a guy over in the Czech Republic, and
Milos.
Milos, and that record was much different from Manic Distortion. So, as an artist, you're always growing. You're changing, and there's nothing you could do about that. But as far as what you were getting at, with the grunge scene coming in, I mean, Unfortunately, that's been the nature of the music business. And look, in the early '90s, when I heard "Womp There It Is" go #1, I thought, well, this is the beginning of the end. So the music business is disappointing, you know. And when I got signed, it was all the right elements going on at the right time, right management, right people, you know. I'm not saying it was necessarily the right record company, but it was a major label, and it got me some exposure. But you know, they had their problems. MCA, when that album came out, my first one, Sleight of Hand, people all over the country couldn't find it in the stores. MCA didn't get it in the stores. The distribution was not good. So that was a big problem back then.
Was there an offer for a second record with them, or was it one album deal back then?
I was getting ready to do another album and a video, and it was going to be a vocal tune. I was going to do Faces in the Dark for a video, but MCA dropped. All of a sudden, they just dropped their whole metal department. I just don't think they could keep up with it, and that was kind of the end of that. Yeah. So I went on to put out the next album myself.
Yeah. You know, so many people want to get signed to a major label, and then when they get there, they seem to always, most of them for the most part, seem to be disappointed. Like I said, either because there's no distribution, there might not be tour support. They want them to change their sound, their style, and everything about things that they signed them for to become whatever just happened to be popular at the time after they signed that band. I mean, so, you know, as excited as you might have been to get signed with MCA, when did you realize down the road, you know, this probably isn't what I thought it was going to be?
Well, one thing about being with MCA and the A&R guy I had total free reign to do whatever I want. What you hear on those records, I had no record companies guys saying, well, maybe you should do this or that. So that was a beautiful thing, you know, just because the type of music I was playing was, if you want to call it new or whatever was happening, that no one knew what to say about it, you know. So I just went in and did it. I mean, they even set me up with a co-producer on the first album, but he didn't do anything to produce that album. That was all me. So that was a good thing about it. It was just unfortunate that it just, their metal department didn't keep growing. They dropped other bands too, and it just became a mess.
Yeah, they might have saw the writing on the wall maybe with the whole metal scene back then. As let's bail out now. Who the hell knows what they were thinking at that time?
Yeah. That's exactly right.
Yeah. Well, you know, I don't know if it was between the two records or after the second one, you know, Dudes of Wrath. I mean, I got to ask you about this because you're talking about something with Tommy Lee, Paul Stanley. I think Desmond Child was a part of that.
Well, yeah. Okay. How Dudes of Wrath, how that got going was when I was doing my first album, Alice Cooper was finishing up his Trash album, but he needed some guitar work for that album. And he was in the studio, a few studios over from me, and it wasn't until like a week later, just one morning, he popped right in my studio. I turned around and Alice Cooper is right in front of my face. Wow. And we just kind of shot the shit for a little bit and didn't even talk about music or anything. And it was probably in another 5 days later, Desmond Child, who was producing, Desmond and Alice brought me into their studio, and they said they needed some guitar work. They wanted me to listen to some tracks. So, so I'm sitting there, I'm listening to what they have to offer. And when they were done, I stood up and I told them, I said, look, this stuff sounds like John Cougar to me. You need some heavy guitars in there. And so I didn't know if I was going to be thrown out or what, but Alex stood up, he said, Guy is right. This needs to be more heavy metal. And so from there, I worked like a full 3 days, day and night, redoing rhythms and some solos. And so I got along with Desmond Child pretty good, and he used me on another record project he was doing in New York at Bearsville Studio. So I flew with him, and it coincided with Alice was flying there with his wife to do a little more work on the Trash album. Anyway, after that was all finished up back east there, Desmond Child was offered to do the soundtrack for the movie Shocker, and he asked me to co-write some songs with him. And at the time I thought, oh man, this is great to co-write with the great Desmond Child. So anyway, we co-wrote a couple tunes together, and he wanted to do a video of one of these tunes. And I'm the one who told him, I said, look, he said he wanted to put a star band together. Now, at the time, with the videos, what were going on MTV at the time, I told him, if you want to put a star band together, get Tommy Lee on drums and get Rudy Zarzo on bass. And I'll be damned if the next very day at the record plant there was Tommy Lee, Rudy Zarzo, and I think they got Vivian Campbell from those Whitesnake videos, seeing him.
Yeah.
I think Desmond liked him. So there we are. We were all thrown together, and eventually, after a little bit, Desmond, it was kind of a playoff on my name, calling the band the Dudes of Wrath. And, Paul Stanley sang on one of the tunes, and it was great to play with Tommy Lee. It was a ball. But that's kind of how that came together. And Alice actually did a talking rap on one of the songs, and me and Kane Roberts wrote lyrics for that song. But that's how that came together, the Dudes of Wrath.
That's amazing. I mean, at that time, were you hoping that maybe something could have came out of that would have been more of maybe like a project or a tour band? Did you kind of know this was it? We were just going to do this one-off thing for the movie soundtrack, and that was going to be the end of it?
Well, the thing that was that could have been really great, they were going to do a video with Paul Stanley in the video singing, and Desmond sang part of the song, and got Paul Stanley, but the Kiss people put a stop on that because they were releasing some Kiss album or something to do with Kiss, so they wouldn't let us do the video. So that was a real heartbreak, because that could have been big promotion and sold a lot of records. But that was all that was planned with that particular band. I mean, can you imagine Tommy on drums and Paul Stanley? But that got squashed. So it's just another thing about the music business that didn't go right.
That is amazing. I mean, I think for me, just being able to work with Desmond Child, especially in the studio, for people that, I mean, I don't know who would have known, but I mean, Desmond Child's written for Bonnie Tyler, Aerosmith, like I said, Alice Cooper, Michael Bolton, Billy Squire, Bon Jovi, Bonfire, you name it. I mean, the guy's written some of the biggest songs in the world. When you're sitting down with him, I mean, do you watch, do you listen, do you learn, do you try to pick up on like what he does to create a song? Because you're a great songwriter yourself, and you have your own style, but do you try to like watch what he's doing and draw from him to see how he comes up with it, how he does it?
Definitely. And when I was working in the studio with him, I realized pretty quickly that Desmond Child was a real genius and a great producer. I definitely picked up on some techniques of his, which, the next year I went to the Czech Republic and I produced some records there. And was definitely using some Desmond Child techniques, no question. He's a brilliant guy, just really, really talented in every way. So that was a great opportunity to work with him.
I can imagine. After you're in the Czech Republic, I mean, you work with Miloš on his records. That's the last I really heard of you until Heaven and Hell decided to get a hold of you and re-release this album. I mean, was there anything musically you did over those years that was put out that we don't know about?
Not really. I just not really. I think I did a lot of recording over in the Czech Republic and stuff that was released there, and it was for that country because it was in the Czech language. But it wasn't a whole lot longer out of that where I started getting into other things. I wanted to do some movie score work, and I was getting into more of that realm. And I scored some cartoons, and I did some shorts, some movie shorts, and I really tried to break into that. But man, that was really hard, and I found out fairly quickly how closed up that area of the movie scorers are. But I just kind of kept growing in it, and there definitely came a time there in the '90s where I just was growing out of what I used to do before.
Yeah. Well,
and also too around that time I started studying piano.
Oh wow!
So I was taking piano lessons from a great jazz teacher in LA, and that was, so I was getting off into that. That's, like I said earlier, artists tend to grow. They get into other things, I mean, hell, look, this Manic Distortion album that was released, I'm not going to outdo that. And I knew back then for the next record, I'm not going to outdo that. So that's why I say the third album, which I did in the Czech Republic, kind of went in a different direction. And I know it would have continued to go in different directions. Just like Jimi Hendrix. I mean, I'm not comparing myself to him, but I know as an artist, he would have grown. He probably would have got into the fusion thing that John McLaughlin was doing, and Jeff Beck got into the fusion thing. I mean, you just tend to grow,
Do you think that that's a problem maybe with a lot of bands, that they do repeat themselves album? I mean, like you take a band like Iron Maiden. Every record sounds like Iron Maiden. They sound the same. They know what the fans like and what they want, and they put out the same thing. But as a musician, as the person writing the music, wouldn't it be disappointing to yourself if you just say, I'm going to just write more of the same because that's what people want? Isn't that not being true to yourself and what you want to do? I mean, these guys have the ability and the money. They do different projects where they can express themselves differently, but as a solo artist, which you technically were, I mean, I know you had your three-piece band with Barry and David, but it was basically you. So, I mean, is that the way you would have went, you think? Like you said, every album would have been something different because that's how you would have grown over the years, and it might not even have been metal maybe 10, 15 years down the road.
Yeah, definitely. There's no way I could have kept putting out albums like, say, the first two that I did. I mean, let's take Metallica. I mean, some bands, some guys have talent, and other guys don't really have the talent to grow. I mean, after, let's say, Metallica's and Justice for All album, to me it was like, you got to be kidding, the stuff that they were coming out with, and how could they possibly just, keep churning out, the same type of stuff, just hardly even done it a different way. That's just not, it's never been me. I've just always gotten into new things. I mean, my God, to go from heavy metal and then to movie scoring, there's no way I could have done that. And, who knows if that's good or bad. Look, my stuff, I never got as big as Metallica. They're the kings of what they do. And hey, more power to them. But that's just something you cannot guide. You got to go where musically in your mind where you're going, and that's it.
That's true. That's why I love when I get somebody says, I was a Metallica fan, but I hate that band today because they're not the same Metallica from '86. I'm like, you're not a fan of them, but they gained 14,000 other ones the last record, so they're not really missing the one or two of us. They don't care no more. But that's just, like you said, the music business is a crazy business, and guy, I'm gonna have to let you go in a few minutes because I have another guest interview I got to get on, and I want to play some music.
Okay.
But I mean, with this record coming out again and a whole new younger audience coming into your style of guitar playing and hearing this for the first time, and hopefully this will lead them, back to the sleight of hand. Have you ever thought about maybe going out and doing a one-off show here and there, with these songs? Because I know you've moved on. It's not really your thing right now, but it would be great to hear you live performing. I know David passed away, I think maybe 7 or 8 years ago, but you think that might be a possibility down the road?
No. It's, with David being gone, and there's just, I mean, he was a big part of my band and helping me do what I was doing, I mean, I'm off into other things. I mean, I don't really touch the guitar anymore. I'm on the piano. When I get a chance, I get to my piano. And I'm really thankful to Jeremy from Heaven and Hell Records, and he called me out of the blue, and was able to get this reissue going. So I'm grateful for that, and I think it's an album that should be heard. There's no question, it's a great album.
Absolutely true. You know what it is? Legends never die. This music lives on forever. People 20 years from now are going to hear it, 40 years from now, and 60 years from now. And you're always going to be the same guy, man, do to them, because, you never get old and you never die in reruns.
That's right.
All right, guys, listen, and it was a pleasure talking with you today. I'm going to get on some more songs off that record. I'm going to go back to the first one probably later on. But it was really nice having you on here today, man. The best of luck with your piano, and hopefully you'll put some piano music out on record. We'll get to hear that.
Well, I really appreciate it. It was great talking to you. You're a great interviewer, Mike. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Guy. Have a great weekend, what's left of it, and enjoy your Labor Day.
Okay. All right.
Take care, my friend. Bye-bye. All right, you know what? We just played, we played Hand in Hand already, so how about we do Against the Grain?
Looking at you and I see it. Going to flow, afraid I don't know what I'm breathing. Procrastinate, a fatal mistake become jaded. The master sees smiling happily masqueraded. Evil roar inside me. Intuition guide me. Destiny calling. Edged in my soul. Against the grain, I will never give in. Tough to tame, and I'll fight to the end. Rage is seething. Compromise room 9, selling yourself to be dusted. A regional slut, satisfied in a rut, well adjusted. Mayday, standing in line so neatly. The rat race is the last place that you'll see me. Won't be subhuman, and the time keeps looming. Destiny calling, etched in my soul. Against the grain, I will never give in. Tough to tame, and I'll fight to the end. Rage is seething. If I move with the system, I'm moving way too slow. In the opposite direction is the way I want to go. Yeah. Never give in! Sheephead, braindead, looking at you and I'm seething. Go with the flow, a trade I don't know while I'm breathing. Procrastinate, a fatal mistake become jaded.
Guy Man Dude Against the Grain. That comes off the 91 record Manic Distortion, re-released last year by Heaven and Hell. Head over to that page, give it a like. Well, you can't like anything on Facebook anymore. They made everything followers now. I went on the other day, I was like, whenever people used to like my page, the show to my page, and they changed everything around Facebook. Thank God I don't really count. I post on there like I do all the social media sites, but I use my own .com to promote my show, and and the Spreaker website over here because I just don't like using social media that much anymore. All right. Well, like I said, go to the Heaven and Hell website, buy the records, support Jeremy's label. He releases a lot of great records. This is just one of them. There were more things I wanted to actually talk to Guy about. I wanted to ask him about Steve Lukather, but I just forgot, because I got to get this next interview on. I want to wrap things up here tonight because I'm heading to Atlantic City, and I want to get this trip going for the weekend. My last weekend away before the end of the year and before I retire. So there you go. All right. Like I said, it is September, and you know what that means? It's the 14th anniversary of the Heavy Metal Mayhem radio show. We kicked it off tonight with Guy Man Dude. We have Jim Crean coming on in a few minutes. Next week, Mantis from Venom Inc. and Venom. Jeff Dunn will be on the show. Who else we have on next week? Matt Pepe from Royal Hell. The week after that, John Gallagher from Raven. Rob Thorne from Sacred Oath. We're bringing out all the big guns for this month. All of our friends are calling in and coming back. We're going to celebrate. 2 weeks we'll have the anniversary show. It'll be no different than this one, just with different guests on and different songs. But stick around. All right. The other day I was saying to myself, we need another witch find. Having one witch find is not enough, so we should really have two. So Tracy Abbott, who's playing in Overdrive, is now playing in another version. He was in Witch Find, I think, for the last few years or so I'm not even sure, to be honest with you. But Andrew Colton, who was in the original Witch Find for the first record and the demos before that, has his version of Witch Find going right now, which is, I think, the 40th anniversary of Give Him Hell Witch Find. I don't even fucking know anymore. It's become so ridiculous. So, so he says, I'm leaving and I'm going to play over there, and it's just crazy shit having so many bands. You have Kevin Riddle's Baphomet, who's out there doing the early Angel Witch music. They said they got Kevin's blessing to do it. Maybe they did. I don't know why he would bless another band going out there performing the early Angel Witch songs, which technically he's still performing live. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the last two Angel Witch records that came out over the last 15 years really didn't do nothing for me. And the two that came out in the mid-'80s, 85 and 86, they weren't bad records, but it was that first one that's a classic. But if you want to hear stuff off of that, go see the old bass player Kevin Riddles, who's also, from Titan, another great band. He's out there doing the old Angel Witch. Now you're going to have this version of Witch Find with Andrew on guitar, who played on the first album. And you'll have Tracy Abbott, who's been the guitar player for them for a while now, and he's also on Overdrive doing, I don't know, it's crazy shit. I don't even know what to say anymore. Too many versions of one band. And it seems like it's always the bass players or the drummers that are forming these second versions of the bands. I don't know what it is with bass players and drummers. Go figure. All right, how about we do a little Amun Ra, Cloak and Dagger.
Within our hand, promises that are written only etched in grains of sand. Within the conversation, do the words ring true? For in the conversation, the deception shining through. Deception shining through. Points to their corners, just like a masquerade. In terms of love and anger and emotion operate. The face of an angel with its demons locked inside. Love is the angel, the demon is the bride. Demon is the bride. How many times there reason? How many ways in right? Faith moves quiet in the present as its fate. Semi one becomes a semi need. Semi without boundaries gets to build this. Won't you build this? How many times in reason? How many ways in rhyme? Gave up broken
Right, Rock Goddess. Satisfied, then Crucified. We're going to get into it with Jim Crean in 2 minutes. I'm going to play something off Scream Take, his brand new band with Vinny Appice. He's worked with Vinny and his brother Carmine for years. We'll talk to him all about that. I just saw my Facebook memory feed. We had Jim on the show 5 years ago today, so go figure that. We'll have to make it a little quicker than every 5 years, Jim, but that was what it was 5 years ago. All right, off the brand new Scream Taker record, we're going to get on a song called The Curse of the Werewolf and go right into that interview with Jim.
Whispers your name. seventh son of a seventh son.
Mike, how are you, buddy?
Great. I saw my cell phone ringing. I'm in the studio with the headphones on. I didn't know which one to go to first.
Gotcha. How's things going?
Great, man. It's a pleasure to talk to you. And listen, been such a fan of your music now. I hate to say for 4 decades because it's been that long and it makes me feel really old. But I've been with you for a long time as a fan, man. And I have to tell you, the new record, Scream Taker, unbelievable.
Awesome. Thank you, bro. Yeah, we're really excited about it.
How did this all come about? I mean, I know you've worked with Carmen and Vinny for years. So, this one's with Vinny. I mean, how did this all come about? How did you decide to put this together and musically where you were going to go with it?
Well, we did it during the COVID thing. So I've been working with a really great guitar player out of France, Stefan. He played with, Paul Di'Anno from Iron Maiden and, Chris Holmes from Wasp. So he's done a lot plus he plays in a band called the Hollywood Monsters and Sun Road. So he's well established in France and Europe. And me and him went back and forth. He actually wrote songs with me on my last record. And so we just were demoing songs out back and forth because really there was nothing else to do during COVID. And these songs started coming out pretty kick-ass. So, then of course I got him over to Vinny and said, what do you think you want to do with some of these songs? I mean, because it sounds real Black Sabbath-y, and Vinny fell in love with them and said, these songs are great. I mean, it sounds like something off of, Mob Rules meets Holy Diver.
Yeah.
So we just started demoing them out, and before you knew it, it became an album. That's really how it started.
That's great. I mean, when you sit down to write anything new or anything that, one of your solo records, maybe a new band that you're playing with, is there some preconceived notion of where you want to go with it? Or do you feel like, when you just kind of wing it and let things come out the way they are, that kind of, is your best work?
Exactly what you just said, the latter part of that. Honestly, it's, I don't really, when I write a song, I don't go in with any intentions of it's got to sound like this, or let's try this, or I want it to be like this. We just start writing, and whatever kind of flows. And especially this record, it just flew. I mean, when I was writing the melodies and stuff, I was just singing, really. Steph would send me music riffs that he had come up with, and then I would go into my studio, because we did this all, at our own home studios.
Yeah.
Because it was during COVID. And I would literally hit record on my studio and just go for it. And a lot of the stuff on the record is one take. It's just the first take, me going, you know what, this is cool. So that's really how the album came about. And it sounds like a real live album kind of. It sounds like we're all in the studio together just making a record.
It really does have that live feel to it, like, very spontaneous, like it was done on the spot, right there while it was happening. I mean, you come into this business where, the way we work today and the way we do things today with, digital technology and be able to record from all different parts of the world, it wasn't like that in the early 80s. You had to be together as a band, and go into the studio. I mean, is it easier to adapt, like, from the old way to the new way over all these years of doing it, or do you like the old way where the whole band is together in the studio and they're working out the kinks on all the songs and, throwing ideas back and forth right there? Or, is the file sharing and swapping, does that work better for you think?
That's a great question. I like both. The old days in the 80s and stuff when we used to go right in the studio, we book studio time and go hibernate in the studio for a month and just come out with a really cool record. Those days were a lot of fun. But now it's just so convenient. Like if I get an idea at 2 o'clock in the morning, I can run downstairs in my home studio and just start recording. That's a really nice convenience. Plus I can take my time with vocals, especially vocals, because when we recorded in the '80s, a lot of times, we had time. You booked time. So if you weren't having a good vocal day, that was just too bad. You had to still record. You know what I mean? Now I could go down and try, and if I'm not feeling it, I can just take a break and come back to it. That's the plus side. The negative side about it is exactly that. You can take too much time on something, and before you know, you have 15 takes of the same exact vocal line that sound exactly the same, but being a perfectionist, you just keep trying it and trying and trying, saying, I can do better. And before you know it, you listen back and you go, they're all exactly the same.
Yeah.
So, and you end up wasting, 4 or 5 hours of your own time doing the same exact thing. So it's got its pros and cons. I mean, I'm a true believer of getting together in a room and just killing it together and writing songs together. I love that. But it seems like that's gone to the wayside, and it seems like this file sharing thing has really become the new now, and I think it's here to stay.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. So many bands that I've interviewed have been around doing this for so long. Like, no, I like it this way. And I think a lot of them say that because they're not in the studio butting heads with each other. They can, kind of do it through emails and little messages. They're not, fighting nonstop and wasting a lot of precious time and money. People don't realize how expensive it is to go into a studio. So I get doing it this way. So, but being such an old school guy, I think there's something that comes out of everybody being together also, because you do have that instantaneous moment where you say, no, just maybe play it like that, and sometimes you do create magic that way.
I agree. So sometimes it's great to be together, and the camaraderie thing happens. You guys all go for a bite to eat, come back, you rejuvenate yourself, come back, and you've got some ideas.
Yeah.
But like you said, you fight about things. You're adamant about, hey, I want it done this way, and they're just not falling together like that. So it's a hard. That's a great question, though, by the way. But it's a hard answer to give you because I like both, and I really do like the fact of I can take my time and kind of do my own thing vocally and even musically. I can just take my time and do it the way it comes to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I've read quite a few reviews so far of the record, and I mean, nobody's had anything bad to say about it, and even if they did, I think they're wrong because you really have a top-notch record here. I mean, one of the best, I think, so far of the year for me, and we're almost through the whole year right now. And a lot of people saying supergroup. I hear supergroup, and I'm like, I don't know. I mean, you got very well-known musicians in here, all played with amazing people and done great things. But sometimes I hear that, I'm like, that's like the jinx of death sometimes, because people I think expect more than they should, and it's just a great record, but it puts it at a whole nother level when you say supergroup. I mean, how do you feel about that moniker?
Well, it's great that you said album of the year, because it's like the third interview I did that day. The interviewer, such as yourself, has said, man, this could fall in, the new AOR album of the year. And that makes me feel good, because I didn't even think of that when we were writing it. Like, hey, this is going to be the album of the year. We just wrote it and had fun with it. So, but I'm hearing that, and it's kind of cool that I'm hearing that. And then you're saying it too. And, you've been around a long time, so you get a lot of music sent over to you. So that's cool that you said that. As far as a supergroup title, I hate it. It's the worst. That's the kiss of death. Supergroup. What's a supergroup? A supergroup to me is something that's all these great musicians get thrown together, they make a record, and then they never talk again. That to me is a supergroup, because that's what happens with every one of those so-called supergroups that come out. They don't last, they don't tour, they don't really do much of anything. So I don't like that at all. I don't like supergroup, and one of the reviews I read was the new supergroup featuring Vinny Appice and Jim Crean and Stefan, and I was like, man, we're not a supergroup. We're just a bunch of guys that got together and made a cool record. Yeah, we've all been established, like you said, in the music business, but supergroups is strong. I mean, supergroup to me would be like Steven Tyler, Tony Iommi. You know what I mean? That to me is a supergroup. That these guys that were just crazy super. I mean, and how awful would that really work if all those guys really got together and did that? You know what I mean? I just don't feel that there would be a great album that would come out of that. Whereas me, Steph, and Vinny have worked together a lot, and I think we're pretty humble guys, where I think it just came out to be a really cool record. And that's so, yeah, to answer the question, supergroup is awful. I don't like that at all.
Yeah, it's true. You guys have worked together a while, and even with Appice or Peace Brothers. I got to give them both different last names, But you've been with them for a very long time now. I mean, is there a comfortability factor with working with the same people over and over again? Because you also have your solo stuff, which you do, which is amazing. But when you work with other people, especially with Vinny and Carmine, who have been around for so long and have such a distinct reputation, the music that they've done, whether it was Carmine with Rod Stewart and Fudge and everything else that he's done, and Vinny with Dio and Sabbath. I mean, how does it all work out together where you guys get along so well that you keep producing top quality records, and there's no ego involved ever, it seems?
Vinny and Carmine are like my brothers. I mean, I love those guys. I've been with those guys for, like you said, a very long time. We do a really cool band called depending on who we're talking to, Appice Brothers or Peace Brothers.
Yeah.
So we just called APPICE. But we've been together, 12 years now. In that band alone, and we play a lot of shows every year, and we've done two records together already with that band. So you're right. There's no ego with those guys. They're the most grounded guys you'll ever meet in your life. And to be as famous and well known as they are, they're the most humble, cool, down to earth guys you'll ever meet. I mean, we call each other like weekly and just talk about the weather. I mean, that's how it is. We don't, sometimes we don't even talk about music at all when we call each other. And I like that approach with those guys. So we became like family. So when I'm working with those guys, it's not like work to me. It's not like, okay, I got to go play with this guy. And it's like I look forward to it. It's fun. And, Carmine, he's 76 years old, and he plays like a 20-year-old, and he plays drums like a 20-year-old. I mean, we just came off the road. We did a little run about 3 weeks ago, and we did a bunch of shows. And man, both of the brothers are on fire still. I mean, they're just playing like nobody's business. So it's a great feeling playing with guys. I get along with Steph Hahn, the guitar player. I get along wonderful with. I mean, him talk all the time, and we're just like we're buddies, So it's great playing with people you really get along with.
It's true. I mean, I know COVID kept everybody down the last 2 years. I mean, shows are starting to happen again this year. Things are picking up, and hopefully we'll just keep going, in this direction. So is Scream Taker something that you're looking to actually get out on the road with? Is it a possibility behind that anytime soon?
100%. That's the goal. Vinny keeps busy with the Last in Line project that he has, which is a great band, phenomenal band. It's got Vivian Campbell in there from Def Leppard, and of course he plays him in Dio. He's got a fantastic band with that. Carmine keeps busy with his his Cactus and Vanilla Fudge still. So those guys keep busy with that. I keep busy with a band called Hair Nation that I do a lot of playing with, and of course we got the Peace Brothers. So in between all of that stuff that we got going on together, we have a lot of time free where we plan on really booking Scream Taker and taking it to Brazil. We've already got offers in Brazil, South America, Europe, and of course here in the States. So offers are really coming in to really play a lot with this band. But based on scheduling and all that, I plan on getting out there. I'd like to do a nice run with this band and do like a maybe 2-3 month tour with this band and really get it out there, because I think the record's so strong that I think people will really fall in love with these songs, especially when you hear them live.
Oh, absolutely. These are going to go over like a bomb when you play them live. And, I mean, we're both New Yorkers. I know you're upstate. I'm down here in the city and, Staten Island these days. But we have such a great thriving scene here in New York. Even, people always bring it back to New York City with Lemoore and a lot of the clubs that were in Manhattan back in the 80s. Like, that's where everybody wanted to go and play. But, upstate New York had an amazing scene. I had Roy Costin from the band DC Strut on about a week ago, and we were talking about everything going on up there, whether it was like, up in Buffalo or down a little lower where you have bands like the Rods, Carl Canny was doing everything over there with every band that came through town. I mean, it was just an amazing scene. I mean, how is it today upstate? I mean, is there enough of a club scene? Because you're talking about Hair Nation. I mean, you've had that thing going for what, like the last 15, 20 years now?
22 years.
22 years. Holy cow. I mean, there's got to be a pretty vibrant scene to keep you busy.
I actually had Roy. Roy actually he played gigs with us. I mean, he's actually been in and out of the band and did shows with us, ironically enough. So I've known Roy for many years. And Carl's a dear friend of mine. I've done shows with Carl, and Carl's a fantastic human being. Yeah. And both guys are great. Roy and Carl are great guys. So, yeah, we actually, ironically enough, we just played at the Cutting Room in New York City with the Peace Brothers 2 weeks ago. So the scene from back then was unbelievable. In the 80s, I mean, you could play literally live every night of the week, and you could go up to from Buffalo. Well, you could start up in Toronto and go all the way up to New York City, Staten Island, Long Island, all that, and then move it right back. Every week you could run like that.
Yeah.
And that's how I did it. And it was unbelievable. Now, not so much. The scene hasn't changed drastically. There's not a lot of venues to play, not a lot of the rock scene has changed a lot, but now with all the social media, you can get your music out there, on the internet. Whereas back then you had to just keep playing. The only way people heard your songs is by jamming them down their throat, playing live. Now you don't need to do that as much. You can get out there and play, choice select cities along with keeping your music on the internet. So it's got its pros and cons with that as well. Personally, I love playing live. That's what I do. But I think the scene has changed a lot. From back when, like you said, back when it was thriving in the 80s.
Yeah. One of the first bands I was able to see when I was able to sneak out of the house as a very young preteen, without getting caught by my parents, was Talus. I saw them open up for Quiet Riot in 1983. And you have a really good connection with them. And Phil, who passed away, I think outside of you, one of the best singers out there, passed away a little over a year ago. You and Phil were like brothers in arms. I mean, you guys were really together on a lot of stuff back then. How did that come about, your relationship? Two singers, no less.
Phil's my best friend. I cry every day about him. I think about him every day, and my heart breaks every day. Not a day has gone by since, even before he passed, when he got sick and called me up and just told me the horrifying news. My heart just breaks every day. I say, I'm not over it. Let's put it that way. I'm not going to get over this thing. I look for him every time I'm in the studio, to be honest with you. When I'm making records, I look for him, because even when I wasn't making records with him, I'd call him and play what I did and say, hey, what do you think of this? Or what should I do here? We got any ideas? And that's kind of the relationship me and him had, like brothers. I mean, and best friends. Yeah. So to answer your question with that, he took me under his wing when I was 13 years old. Or no, I'm sorry, I was like 15 years old when I met Phil, and we started opening up for Talus. Here, he's from Rochester, New York, but he joined the Buffalo-based Talus, which is the super group of Buffalo, all the way back from the 3-piece, which was phenomenal, all the way up to the 4-piece that he was in. And we got lucky enough to have the same agency booking the band I was in, and then they would put us in front of Talus. Well, a couple of times we were playing, and Phil was just kind of hanging out, watching me play on the side of the stage, and I'm like, wow, this guy's great, and he's watching me play. And he pulled me aside and said, hey, I see a lot in you, and we should write some songs together. And I was like, wow, that's cool, And then the next thing you know, we're writing songs together, and before you know it, we're recording songs together and making albums together. And that started, like I said, in 1984. So from that time forward, me and him, we have thousands of songs written together. I mean, demoed, and I got catalogs of songs. And they got a new Talus album coming out. Actually, it should be out around the same time Scream Taker's coming out.
Yeah.
And I've heard it all, and it's Phil's last recording. Well, he did one called Lips Turn Blue, which is out now, which is phenomenal. I tell everybody to go out and get that. I'm actually on a couple songs, background vocals. I did some background vocals on it. Lips Turn Blue, it's called. And but the new Talus album's coming out, so I'm real excited. It's kind of like the final, tribute to Phil.
Yeah.
So but he was so proud of that record, and he played it for me when it all got done, and we sat and listened to it. Knowing that he was sick, it was really hard for me to just embrace it and go, wow, I'm so happy for you, knowing the end result was going to be what it was. And but I tell everybody, go out and get that album. It's going to be, if you like my style of singing, it's almost exactly like Phil's, and we really go out there and we really gave it our all every time. So
yeah,
Phil was
it's rare when you think about it. Like another musician, like it says, Talus was established back then. They were sort of the king of the club scene back then, also, especially upstate. And you have this singer,
Sure.
you know, taking you under his wing, and you usually hear about the rivalries, you know, like the way they don't want to, you know, support the other bands, and there's always those like, you know, like the lead singer ego, I guess people call it. And this guy takes you under his wing, and you become best friends and music mates, really, for most of your career. And now and I didn't realize you were 15 years old when you were in that band. You know, you were really young. What was the name of that band? Because for some reason I can't remember that.
That was a band called Strutter. So.
Strutter. Okay, I remember hearing about that.
Yeah, we played a lot, and you know, you're right. There was so much rivalry back then, especially here in Buffalo and Rochester. Bands just would slam each other, and it was horrible actually. And it got ugly, that whole thing. But Phil was not that guy. Phil was the guy that said, "I'm going to help you. We're going to get you there," you know. And Phil actually got me a bunch of auditions for like a couple pretty big bands. Like there was a band called Breaker out of Cleveland that, you know, I was so young I didn't want to move to, you know, Cleveland at 16, 17 years old, you know. But there was a lot of stuff. There was Skid Row when Skid Row wasn't Skid Row. It was just the guys from Skid Row forming it. They wanted Phil to actually join the band, but he didn't like really like that style of hard rock yet, you know. It's sleaze rock, I guess you would call it at that time. But then Coney Hatch. So there was a lot of things like that happening. And let's take it back to what you're saying, the Kings of the Bar Scene, the three-piece Talus with Dave Constantino, who's just one of the best guitar players on the planet. I did a lot of work with him as well, you know, and he's another guy who, you know, kind of took me under his wing as well, you know. So that version of Talus was phenomenal too. Let's not forget that. The three-piece Talus, Dave, Paul, and Billy, was unbelievable. But then when I first started watching the four-piece band with Mark, Mitch, and Billy, and Phil, of course, that just blew me away, you know. So I was lucky enough to be a part of that, and that's really cool that I can say that. And like you said, me and Phil, all those years, just worked together and really became musical partners throughout the, you know, 3-4 decades.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, till today, I mean, I remember seeing them on stage that first time and seeing Billy Sheehan up there, and I was like, what the hell's that guy playing? That can't be a bass guitar. Like, it just blew my mind watching this guy play that. I was like, holy cow, what is this man doing with those 4 strings? It was unbelievable. And until today, I mean, I'll always go back to that one show as the one that left the most lasting impression on me. And I've seen a million bands over the last 4 decades. Watching him play up on stage, that was just mind-blowing.
Where was that, at Lamar's when you saw him?
That was at Lamar. I think it was like 82, 83. They opened for Quiet Riot.
Oh, yeah, that would be 84. Yeah, 83.
83,
yeah.
okay. Yeah, 83. I knew it was back then
Yeah.
somewhere. And that was just an amazing night. And they were such a great band. I mean, when you talk about Strutter, I mean, you know, 15 years old, you're probably in your first, like, real band. Did you think you guys were going to take over the world back then, that you were going to be the next Kiss?
I thought our songs were great. I mean,
Yeah.
we were all original, so we did like 2 cover songs, but all originals. And of course, yeah, you think to yourself, you know, we're just as good as any band out there, you know, because you're writing cool songs, and we knew we were all young guys. I was the youngest, obviously, but there was all guys like 17 and 18 in the band, so we knew what was happening at that time. Like that was when all the 80s bands were They weren't called 80s bands, obviously, because they were current bands, but like the Motley Crues and all that stuff, you know what I mean? That was when all those bands, that scene was happening. So we were real in tune to that scene. Like we knew that those type of bands, like rap before they were really rap, and all these bands, we knew that sound. So we were going for that sound. We were like, we're going to be a part of this. So we were in tune to the new music. And I remember Phil was a little older than I, and Phil would say to me when he was writing songs for Talus, he'd be like, hey, is it like, do the kids want to hear this type of stuff, you know? Because Phil was, you know, he was exactly 10 years older than I was. So, you know, he was maybe 26 at the time, 27. And he was saying to me, well, I remember him writing a couple of songs that became Talus songs, and him saying, well, the kids like you know, your guys' age, would you guys like this type of stuff? You know what I mean? So, and I thought to myself, that's cool that he's asking me for advice because, you know, we're in the now, you know? So, yeah, to answer that, we were pretty cocky, brash little kids thinking we were going to take on the world, of course. And if you don't think like that, then you could never take on the world, you know. But then you look back, I look back now and I go, God, were we just awful.
Well, like you said, you're full of bravado. You're 15 years old. You think your shit don't stink, but it must be a great time. I would have loved to have seen that live. But you were talking about breaking. I remember the first record, Get Tough. I think Jim Heyman was a singer on that record out of Cleveland. And I'm listening to that record in my head now, and I'm picturing you singing. I'm like, that would have been fantastic. I know it wasn't meant to be, but just listening to those songs in my head right now, I'm like, wow, having Jim sing those songs, that would have been something else.
Yeah, and Phil sent him my demos and stuff. I have a couple Strutter demos and stuff that were pretty cool, and at the time, and he signed. They were real interested, So, but I just wasn't a thing, And I remember Phil saying, "Hey, you should go. This is a good band." But then, they were opening up for bands like Talus, so they weren't really a headlining band. They were like an opener band, like no different than what I was in. So I'm like, well, I don't want to do a lateral movement and join a band that's struggling in another band, I'd rather be in a headlining band, So to me, it didn't seem like. I thought at that moment I had a better shot at what I was doing. You know what I mean? Than joining a band that was doing exactly what I was doing.
Absolutely.
But that was just one of the bands. There was other bands that I can't remember all of them, but Phil was in pretty high demand. He was getting a lot of offers at the time to go join bands, and that was like right around the time Talus was like Billy was just joined David Lee Roth, and Phil was looking. He was trying to keep Talus together with Bruno and those guys. Actually moved to the city. He moved to New York City with Bruno and Al Petrelli and all those guys, which ended up being Danger. But he was the initial guy, and they were calling it Talus, but they were trying to keep that alive, and then bands were reaching out to Phil, like I said, Skid Row did, and Coney Hatch, and I can't remember another band too. I forget, but they were all reaching out to him, and then Phil would like kind of push me to it. He'd be like, "Well, why don't you go check this out?" So there was a lot of that going on. But back then, it was such a different scene because, again, these bands, everybody was just trying to do their thing, right? Like Sebastian Bach was a Toronto guy, so he was playing in a band called Kid Wicked, and they would come up here to Buffalo, and they were just a band just like what we were, like all these bands we were all just kind of doing our own thing, you know what I mean? And so, but looking back in hindsight, Sebastian Bach was a perfect fit for Skid Row. He came and turned that band into what is known as Skid Row, right? So there was a lot of that cool stuff going here in the East Coast, and of course in the West Coast it was even crazier, So it was an exciting time being in a band in the 80s, I got to say. It was a very exciting time.
It absolutely was. I mean, when you look back now, you can say, going to break and not going to break, that was a good move because the band didn't go nowhere. Nothing really happened to them, and they broke up not long after that. But that's now you could look back and say that. Do you remember any other opportunities that you've had over the last few decades that you passed up and then later on said, oh, man, why'd I pass that up? Look what it turned into.
There was a really cool band in Europe that contacted me. I can't think for the life of me. I thought about the other day. I couldn't think when they had great songs and they were really good and they were playing like Whackin' Festival and they were doing all these cool gigs. And I can't think what they were called. Angra or something like that. Something like that. And I thought about it the other day actually, and I thought to myself, whatever happened to that band? Because I remember when they were looking for a singer, their management was reaching out to my management at the time. And then I demoed stuff back and forth for them. I sang on a couple of songs that they had, and they loved it, and blah, 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 blah. And I remember, like, they had Whackin' booked, and they had some really cool shows booked. I think they were called, like, Angra.
Yeah, there is a band called Angra, yeah, Angra, Angra.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And they were really good, like, fantastic. And I often thought, man, what if I would have jumped into that? Because, like I said, they were playing, like, well, that Whackin', which is Castle Donington festivals, they were playing big things like that. Like, that's all they were doing. Early on sets, but, like, they were still playing at these big, cool festivals. And I often thought, well, wouldn't that have been cool? But, I didn't want to move to Europe and stuff like that and do that. I mean, these guys were from, like, Sweden or Denmark or something like that or somewhere like that. But that was one band that comes to mind. But there were so many different things that would come up, you know what I mean? And it's a weird business because you never know if you're making the right choice or not,
Yeah.
Do you move to L.A.? Do you not move to L.A.? Do you move to New York City? What do you do,
Well, being in a band could be a blessing and a curse, like we were talking about earlier on. I mean, you could get in there with 3 or 4 or 5 guys and have the time of your life and get along for the length of the band. And then, you get into a band and there's nothing but headaches from day one, and you kind of fight through them all just to keep it going because you've had some success or you've gained some momentum, and you don't want to keep it going, even though maybe mentally you're like, I'm exhausted from dealing with these 3 or 4 guys, or even one guy. So I mean, in the end, is it better being a solo artist? Because you work with, like I said, you work with Vinny and Carmine for a long time, and that works out. But is it better doing your solo stuff where you're in complete control of everything and you dictate where everything goes?
Sure. I mean, for sure. But I've never been that guy where, like, I don't get along with my bandmates. I try and get along with everybody. I try and respect everybody. We're all doing our thing, and our thing makes music together. And I've always felt like that. So I've always wanted to play with guys or girls that we get on with really well. And I think that's why I've always, like, International lasted 22 years, because it's, we try and make it fun. I don't try and make it like it's, shit, I got to go do this tonight. I try and make it like, I look forward to doing this tonight, that way. But when you're doing your solo stuff, yeah, there's a lot more control on your end, but there's also a lot more pressure on your end, because my last 3 solo albums, I got some pretty big name guys on it. So, I had guys like Mike Tramp, who's a dear friend of mine. He was on it, like Frank Mino from Angel. Guys like that, Tony Franklin, just some big name players would jump on. Rudy Sarzo, guys like that. But the pressure is, that you want to make it the best it can be, because if you got all these great players on there, I got to step up to that, expectation. So that's the only pressure that I felt with doing my own solo stuff. But as far as the headaches of it, it's fun because, like you said, you're in total control. So yeah, that's fun.
Sure. Was there ever one person you've played with or worked with, whether it was on a song or maybe live, where you actually felt intimidated, where you were like maybe you were just a big fan of that artist, or you loved everything that person did, now you're like, wow, now I got the opportunity to work with him. Like, do you ever get like a little nervous about that, or is it just like, hey, I'm a professional and it doesn't matter who I'm playing with, even if I'm the biggest fan of that person in the world and I'm in awe, I'm just going to go out there and do it?
No, I mean, because I've never been like googly eye over stuff like that, because they're doing the same thing I'm doing. So I just always would be like, well, it's cool. Like when I got the opportunity to work with Frank Domino, I was a big fan of him in the 70s, before I even got into music. As a kid, I would,
Angel, yeah.
Listen to Angel albums in the 70s, before music was even in my wheelhouse of being in a band or anything like that. And then before you know it, I'm on stage with the guy singing songs with them, and next thing you know, the guy's on my record. But he's one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet in your life. So no, I've never had that issue, but it's kind of cool. We did the Hall of Heavy Metal History a couple of years ago with the Peace Brothers, and out in the crowd was pretty much a who's who of, you name it, they were there. We had Bill Ward in the audience. We had Lee Kerslake, Lita Ford. You name everybody from the 80s that was somebody or is somebody, and they were out in the crowd. Zakk Wylde, all these people. And, we had to go do a set in front of them. So I thought, that's cool, And we just went out there and did our thing. And then afterwards, they're all coming up to us, hey, you guys did a great job, that type of thing. So, yeah, no, I never got like intimidated. I never thought like that, because here's the thing. At an early age, one of my heroes, Phil Naro, was working with me. So I'm like, okay, I'm already working with a guy I looked up to, who is already like my best friend. We're working together, so what? Everybody else, whatever, you know what I mean? So no, I never was intimidated, but I'm very appreciative of all these guys who I've worked with, for sure, such as your guy, pretty much everybody on my records. Who contribute on my records, I'm very appreciative, and I really look at it like it's a big honor to have gotten to share the stage with these guys, or record with them, for sure.
Is there anybody left on the list that you didn't scratch off yet that you want to get to do something with?
That's a great question. Robin Zander from Cheap Trick, but I came close to working with him, and it's still, just keep your fingers crossed for me, Mike. And, of course, Tyler. I never got to work with Ronnie Dio, which would have been a great thing. And it's funny because I've worked with everybody in his camp. I worked with, of course, Vinny. I've worked with Vivian. I've worked with Jimmy Bain. We actually, on my Insatiable album, Jimmy Bain actually did his last recording he ever did before he passed away. On my album, we did a Dio song called Caught in the Middle. I've worked with Angelo Curry, which was Dio's producer. I've worked with pretty much everybody in Dio's camp, Rowan Robertson, except for Ronnie. So I never got to work with Ronnie. That would have been a pretty magical, and I use that word magical moment. But now I think Steven Tyler would be really cool. I think that would be, me and him would really, I think, bang it out pretty good. And of course, Robin Zander. And I look up to both of those guys. Like, they're on my top of the list. But again, I'm just thrilled that I got to work with Phil Naro all those years, because he was my guy, you know. And it's so cool that there's so much out there with me and him. And like I said, The Lips Turn Blue just got released a couple weeks ago, and I'm on background vocals on it. So if I don't get to work with anybody ever again, pop big like that, at least I got that. I got to work with Phil, and I'm really happy about that.
That is a great thing. I'm happy we're going to get new Talos music with him on it, and I'm more happy that, Scream Taker, the new record's coming out. Jim, I believe it's September 23rd on Deco. It's coming out.
It is, yeah. We're real excited. Yeah, cool, huh?
It's cool, a great title. I love it.
I came up with that. Yeah, it was like the song was just. It's a fun song because it's like I was watching. Ever watch Ancient Aliens? That show, Ancient Aliens. I was watching that. And then I thought, geez, we're considered, we're attracted. Like, you look at an alien, and you go, oh my God, they're so horrifying looking, and humans look beautiful, right? So that's what this song's about, like, kill the beautiful. Can't kill the beautiful. You know what I mean? So it's got a really cool kind of Ronnie James Dio thing going, But I thought, what a cool title. And then everybody got nervous, said, well, you shouldn't really say kill in the title, and nowadays you got to be careful on what you say and how you say it. You can't use the word kill, but it's not about killing, like physically kill someone. I mean, kill beauty. Like, if you have beauty inside or out, you can't take it away. You know what I mean? That's really what it means. It doesn't mean like you're going to physically kill the beautiful.
No, I get that. Somebody. We live in a world that's a little too sensitive today. This is rock and roll. It's supposed to be this way.
Well, that's what I was worried about. People are like, nowadays everybody's sensitive. It's like, kill. This guy wants to kill somebody. What? Kill him. No, it's nothing like that. It means you can't take away. And here I am having to describe myself now, and that's the worst thing you have to do when you write a song. I always like to leave it open for interpretation. You should never have to describe what you wrote a song about. It should mean everything different to somebody else. But nowadays you have to say, well, hang on, you got to defend yourself, But I thought it was a cool title. So so when I proposed it to the record label, they thought, that's cool. That's fine. Let's call it that. So that's what we all decided on, and that's kind of where we're going. The cover. Have you seen the album cover yet?
I've seen the cover. It's great.
Jeff DeBurry did that, and he did it. I gave him the ideas, so I gave him a lot of cool ideas. I wanted something like that, and then he came up with that. It came out really cool, and then Lee Stokes came up with all the graphic design on the booklet. Wait till you see that; it's going to look fantastic. And the art, and Charlie at Deco is really getting behind the record. I'm really excited about this record.
It's going to be a great release. Do you know if they're going to put a vinyl version of it out?
I want them to, and that's the first thing. When Jeff Keller, our manager, got us the deal, that was my big stipulation. I said, I really want to get this on vinyl because I think this album needs it on vinyl. And there's enough vinyl collectors out there. Even if we do a limited press of like 5,000,
Yeah.
And I said, there's a market for that. There's a demand for that. And then I guess vinyl is so backed up right now. It's like 6-7 months backed out, is from what I'm told from the label. So they said, well, let's put this thing out there now. They got a cool bundle thing going right now where it's like a T-shirt. You get a T-shirt, you get the CD, and then you get like a cool book that has all the lyrics in it and pictures and all the stuff autographed by the band. So that's what they're putting out as a bundle pack, and which looks fantastic. And then they said, well, then once we get this out there, we can maybe revisit and do a vinyl. So I'm hoping on a vinyl. I think it'd look really cool with the red vinyl with that logo. Since you've seen the cover, you know what I'm talking about. The Screaming Girls on the front. I think that would look really cool.
It'll look fantastic. But yeah, a lot of labels are having manufacturing problems right now, over the last year getting them. But in a way, maybe that's a good thing because, you get this out there like this, and then maybe 6-7 months down the road, they do vinyl, and it brings life back to the record again. When people have moved on, they'll say, hey, this is back, and it gives a second life,
Yeah, no, this album needs. I want to hear how it's going to sound on vinyl because it's got that old school sound to it. So I think it would just sound. Because let's face it, when you put vinyl on, it sounds so much better than a digital CD, I think.
Yeah.
And it would just sound really cool on vinyl. I hope it does. I hope it really comes out on vinyl because I think that there's a market for it.
I'll just start emailing the label saying I want to buy this, but I need the vinyl. I'll keep doing it every day with different email address till they get the hint.
Yeah.
And we'll get it out there.
Yeah, I'm like, do that. You stay on them because I want it out on vinyl. I mean, you and everybody else wants it on vinyl. So
Yep.
I think we should really do a petition and get it out on vinyl.
I'm sure it will be. Hey, Jim, I'm not going to keep you, man. I appreciate you talking with me today. This is going to be on this weekend show. You've been one of my favorite singers for a very long time, and I'm so happy about this new record from Scream Take It. And I know being in New York, you will do some shows here when you get out there playing live, and I'm going to be at one of the first ones.
Mike, thanks, man. I was on your show once before, and we had a great conversation. I remember it was about 5 years ago.
Yeah,
and you did a great job. So keep working. I'm glad to see you're still kicking ass and keep doing it. And I got another thing I wanted to say. I got I'm on a Def Leppard tribute album that drops. I think it drops next Tuesday. It's on F&A Records. It's a tribute to Def Leppard. I did 2 songs on there, so keep a lookout for that too.
All right, well, what did you sing?
We did Foolin' with Jessie Galante. She's from Buffalo. She was in a band called Actor, and then she was also in a band called and she went in L.A. She was in a big band too. And then I did Mirror Mirror, which came out really cool.
Oh, nice. I want to hear that.
Yeah, so it's on F&A Records. I maybe it's next Friday. I don't know when it actually drops, but keep an eye out for that too. That should be pretty cool.
I will. I'll get all the links and I'll put them up with the interview when we do it. Jim, you have a great weekend, my friend. We've got to do this again soon.
Mike, great talking to you. Thanks for reaching out.
You too, buddy. Take care. Have a good one.
See you, pal. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Watch what you say, watch what you do.
Okay, brand new Scream Taker, Burning Flame off of Kill the Beautiful. Pick up that record. I want to thank Jim and Guy for being on tonight's show. I want to wish everybody a happy Labor Day weekend. I hope you're off tomorrow. I know I am. And I'm going to be heading out to Atlantic City with the family for the day. Hopefully the weather will be nice. Right now, it's thunder, lightning, and a lot of rain here in New York. So hopefully New Jersey will be a little better. We'll see. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in tonight. I will see you guys next Sunday night. Jeff Dunn, Mantis of Venom and Venom Inc. will be on the show, as well as Matt Pepe from Raw Hell. Frank Pepe's. I was in Connecticut a few weeks ago. I'm thinking of Frank Pepe's Pizza. But Matt Pepe from Raw Hell will also be on the show live next week. And we're going to follow it up with a 14-year anniversary show with John Gallagher of Raven. And all the boys from Oblivion are going to be calling in that day. So stick around. It's going to be a great month. Take care, everybody. Have a good week. How about we wrap it up with a little Iron Angel, Rush Your Power. See you guys next Sunday.
Of